we have to create the right vibe, the energy, and everybody at the organization has to feel so privileged to be here. It's no other way.
Thanks for listening to the Purely Arsenal podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at PurelyArsenalFP for all the latest Arsenal podcasts.
Welcome to the Sit Down at the Purely Arsenal podcast. We're back, and I've got an old, fantastic guest that lots of you regulars will remember. It's Garet Kreutziger. How you doing, Garet?
I'm good, Jack. It's good to be back, man. It's been way too long.
I knew I was going to bring you back for when all the glories come. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, we've got to get Garet back on. Honestly, still now, get people, the original listeners, and obviously the original members like Neil and yourself, and they're always asking, when you're getting Garet back on.
I know. Thanks for not calling me the last couple of years. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I was like, I'll pay you for it. I couldn't get anyone on the last couple of years. But now, it's early days in the season. We've got this weird hiatus going on, but we obviously, we'll talk about the effect of what the World Cup's going to have. Obviously, we've got a 6-week break now, so there's enough time to talk and think about Arsenal. But it's been 14 games in the Premier League, 12 wins. We made it on the weekend with a 2-0 win over Wolves and 1 draw and 1 defeat. It's the best ever start Arsenal have had to a Premier League season. There have been better ones. I think City got to 40 points at this point. I think Liverpool in their ridiculous year. They also were at 40, but I think the league's getting stronger and stronger every year, so it is pretty remarkable. I mean, how do you feel, Garet, being a fan for many years, sort of, the early 2000s up until now? I mean, how do you feel watching this team? Like, what's your feeling?
I was watching this game and the games of the season, this season, and I just don't, other than like the prime Wenger years, when we were just playing people off the pitch and there was like so fluid and the movement was so fantastic. I always felt like there was something missing from those teams, even then when we were scoring 5 goals a game and doing all this other playing great football. But when I watch this team play, I see a lot of that. It's not so much fluidity, but it's the structure that Arteta likes, and it's his system that I think with the types of players that we have, we play such great football within that system. But then we also have the defensive solidarity that I felt like we never had in certainly the past couple of seasons, but maybe even in some of our best seasons since we've won the title and in some of our other trophies. And it's so, you look at our goal difference right now, and if you were just to compare it to this point last year, this is a completely different team, and I think we play the best stuff in the league. And it's not even close.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And the expected goals, I don't know if I've kind of got into the XG, the expected goals in the last couple of years, because it kind of, and we're actually, I believe our expected goals, we are top, just above City. So basically, our expected points tally is basically saying that we should be top of the league. But I think if you base it on the whole season, I know you've watched every game because I text you after most, but other than the Leeds game, certainly the second half of Leeds, where it felt like we got away with one, I felt we should have won every game, even including the United and the Southampton games. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that? No,
absolutely. I think Leeds was just I'll call it a one-off. I mean, it's our one loss, right? It's a one-off of the season.
United was the loss. We actually got away with that.
I'm sorry. No, you're right. Yeah, we did get away with that Leeds one. The United, we played better football in that game than some of the games that we've been able to win. So it's one of those things where I just feel like this as a whole, we've been playing so fantastic, and we've been playing. I just think this is exactly what Arteta has been trying to build ever since he started with us. And it's so exciting to watch us play. And even in these games where we don't play so well, maybe we have a slow start, which typically we don't. We come out the blocks pretty hot and we really see if teams can cope with us. But when we have these games where we're a little slow, I always have the assurance that we're going to come through, right? Like just this last game against Wolves, 0-0 at halftime. I felt like we played some pretty good stuff in the first half, and I had no worries of us coming out of there with 3 points. Not one.
It's amazing to have that confidence after everything we've been through in the past years, even under Arteta, the early years under Arteta. I mean, he had some tough stuff to deal with. I certainly was someone that, 18 months ago, I can't lie about it, was on the podcast. I was talking, I didn't necessarily think he was the right guy. I was seeing poor performances. I felt we were having, obviously the poor results were there too. We weren't progressing, but he did have a lot of cleaning up to do in the squad, and he had to do it in a way that, sometimes sacrificed the results and the stuff on the pitch at times, the stuff that went with, the Ozil, the Guendouzi's, the Aubameyangs, and so on. So it is amazing to start to see us come out the other side now, and how quickly it's changed, even from last year, Gareth, because last year there was definite improvement last year. I talked about it all year, but obviously in the end you felt like you missed out on something that felt quite sure towards the end of the season in terms of getting back in the Champions League.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So the progression since then has been amazing. I mean, did you see it coming? I guess is a good question. Did you see this happening? I mean, it's hard to see a season like this so far because it's been so remarkable. But did you see the progression in terms of us sort of being considered as title challengers, for example?
Title challengers, maybe not. Some of my friends were giving me a lot of grief, but when the season started, even prior to, some of just the off-season acquisitions, especially Gabriel Jesus, the return of William Saliba, I felt like this team was special, but I didn't know how special. Like, if you would have asked me before the season started, I would have said top 4, no question. And then I look at some of the other teams in the Premier League, and you see guys, Newcastle spending a lot of money, Chelsea spending a lot of money, but Liverpool got weaker. I don't think they truly looked at how important of a player Sadio Mane was to them. I think they overlooked that, and that's kind of ringing true. And they're getting older too, right?
Yeah, they're aging a little bit.
Manchester City is who they are. That's not going to change. Manchester United, I don't know. One of those teams to me is I didn't see them as a threat to Arsenal, and I always thought top 3 minimum, second place possibility, to be quite honest. And the reason for it is because Arteta didn't seem like the guy. I totally agree. I was getting very frustrated looking at his style of play last season, and at some points when we had that dreadful start and just kind of trying to recover from that. And you look at how we were playing, and I think now we're seeing that the reason for those frustrations that we might have experienced with him was because of how much work he had to do with the squad and what he didn't have in the squad. And now we're seeing the squad that he wanted to build, him and Edu and everyone else that's, up above there, part of those discussions. And it's really working. It's really working.
It is really working. And like you said just before we started the pod, it's it is frustrating. The momentum's with us for sure, and especially after watch the weekend and you watch City's game. And I'm not up at that time unless it's an Arsenal game. But somehow something woke me up at that time, and I went and I couldn't go back to sleep. And as I was up, I just put on the City game, and that was probably the first time in a while I've sat and watched 90 minutes of City. Usually, you just look at the result and go, "Oh yeah, they've won again." But I was really surprised with what I saw. I thought Brentford comfortably should have won the game, but they ended up just nicking it at the end. But they had a lot of issues. Obviously, that's not exactly how City play all the time, but it was, people sort of talk about City as this sort of invincible kind of team, and this team that's, very little people, even up to this point, have considered us in the title race. I think for me, that was the first time I kind of watched it, and I went, okay, maybe we're in a race here. Maybe there's a chance here. I mean, you probably thought it a little bit earlier than me, but it's been so long since I've been in that position. It's hard. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to know.
I hear you. I get it, and everyone's very hesitant to even put the words out there, right? Arsenal in the title race, especially Arsenal fans. Right? We don't even want to, because we don't want to have the egg on our face when it comes back to haunt us and City overtake us. But I mean, just look at it like this. If you were to look at the standings and there was no name associated with anyone that's in the standings now, right? And you look at the way that teams have started the first 14 games of a Premier League season. Arsenal at 37 points. So just say it's not Arsenal. Say it's team number 1, right? Team number 1 with 37 points through 14 games has done what every single time they've done it. Yeah. I think 9 out of 10 times they finished top of the league.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think there's more to it than just the statistics and the history. Like, we have to look at the squad. It's the youngest squad in the Premier League. So manager hasn't accomplished truly anything. Right. So people, I think, are looking at that as the barriers to the discussion of saying Arsenal in the Premier League or in the title race. But I mean, take it for what it is. I mean, they're there.
Yeah.
We're going to be top of Boxing Day, even if we lose. But when we come back, and we got 5 points clear.
Yeah, it's insane to be in that position. And like you said, it's not just being there. When you watch the 14 games, we've been the best team. Like you said, in terms of balance, I think we've got the best defence record alongside Newcastle in the league, with second top goal scorers in the league. But the football, in terms of the balance we're playing, I mean, the one thing people constantly go back to in terms of us being in the title race, Garrett, is the thinness of the squad, the youthfulness too, but the thinness. And in this game, as we get into it a little bit, there was a stomach bug that was going through. We didn't know about it at the time, but I did think it was very odd that Xhaka went down after a minute. I was like, either he's done his ACL or there's something going on we don't know about here.
I know. I was so worried too.
Yeah, well, he's got probably his last World Cup coming up, and he went down. At the point of him going down, who are you thinking he was going to bring on?
I thought it would be Lokonga, personally.
Yeah. What do you think it says for Lokonga? Because I've been I'm very 50-50 on Lokonga. I'm not sure whether he'll make it at Arsenal or not. I don't know if I'm prejudging a little bit too fast on it, but
I think he's a player that's probably struggling for some confidence. I mean, he's been pretty outspoken on the whole issue of how frustrated he is, and gosh, is he going to the World Cup?
He didn't get called up because, the last friendly, he spoke out really strongly against Martinez, the manager, which was an odd thing to do before World Cup.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
But if you think about who he was as a player when we brought him in, right? He captained Anderlecht. He was super promising youngster. I personally really like the way he plays. When you just watch him as a player, he's really smooth. I think he's got an excellent first touch. He's kind of one of those guys that weighs a pass really well, which I always like to see, and it always just kind of stays right on the floor. But I think when you look at where we were hoping he would be in the positions that I think he was picked up to play, kind of where Partey's at, he's not quite there. And I think he's kind of drifting into the Tavares zone a little bit, which is unfortunate, I think, because, if I was on this podcast last year, I'd probably been cursing Tavares up and down. But I don't think he has the same deficiencies as he does. I think he's a great footballer. I just think he's really struggling to find his way. And I hope he can make it at Arsenal. I really do. But he ultimately didn't get to be part of this fixture.
Yeah, and it was great to see. I thought on the other hand, because immediately when I thought what are the options, and I thought either Lokonga or Vieira were the obvious options. But with Sambi, the worry there is El Neni's now the backup option to Partey, and I don't think any of us think El Neni is ever going to make it to Partey's level, but we know that he can sustain a level that is, a 7 out of 10, a sort of reliable section for a part of a game that can give Partey's legs a little bit minutes. But if he's not making it into the 8 position as well, Garrett, then that's where we're starting to think maybe he's just losing some trust from the manager at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that would be
I was hoping it wouldn't be El Neni, to be honest, because Wolves bottom of the league, I get that, but going away from home, I just don't want to see El Neni in there when we're trying to score some goals, take the game to an opponent. I don't want to see that. And I think Vieira was ultimately it paid out to be a pretty good decision.
Yeah, because he obviously we'll talk a little bit on the first half where they caused us a little bit of problems in the first half. I would say we obviously created some chances. Jesus had the one that was offside, which I think he could have done a little bit better to stay onside. Of course, when he's offside, he puts it away beautifully. He's having a little bit of a rut, Jesus, but he's such a good player for us, so huge for us. When I was watching City, and I was watching Haaland a lot against Brentford, I just thought, because it's Haaland, you're going to watch him, but if they contain him, because he doesn't move too much around the box, City, I don't want to say they look one-dimensional, but they start to look more out of ideas than they used to, put it that way, because now they have this focal point. Whereas when they used to play Jesus or Aguero up there, for example, there was constant interchange. It was like you didn't really know who was central, which is what we do a lot of. Like Jesus finds himself at left back sometimes. We're just all over the place, aren't we? And we, in fairness to us, we look a lot more fluid than they do on a regular basis, I would say, in terms of creation. Now, of course, the caveat to that is we don't want Jesus to go 11 games without goals, without scoring. But I think as hard as it is to say, I think he's been a little bit unlucky.
I agree. And has it been that many games where he hasn't
I think
scored?
so. I think that's including Europa and League Cup stuff, So
sure.
League maybe a little bit less, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on that really quickly. I mean, let's just say it's been 11 games that he hasn't scored, but it really doesn't feel like it, right? Because of the impact that he makes to this team overall. I mean, you look at just his contribution at Wolves, and he's making tackles in our own defensive half, and he's playing final balls that are killer. And then I agree, maybe his positioning was a little poor, not being on side on that instance, because he really tucked it away nicely. That'd have been a good way to close out, I'll call it, this first half of the season, this pre-World Cup break. But ultimately he didn't get it in there. But I think his contribution to the team is so telling. Not maybe the end product's not there, but everything else he does, he's so important to this team. I mean, just look at the contribution that he makes to this team, as opposed to a center forward that we've had for the past 5 seasons. I mean,
huge.
It's not even comparable.
It's massive. It's massive. I agree with that. I mean, obviously, with Aubameyang, who was so the opposite to him. I mean, a guy that plays off the shoulder and rarely. I mean, you saw it against Chelsea, didn't you? Really, they're just one guy's so involved. I think Jesus had 60 touches, Aubameyang had 8, and that is not just that game. It's just pretty much you look over a span of 10 games, that'll be pretty similar,
Yeah, I
and
know.
that's quite amazing. Well, Lacazette just physically wasn't really up to being.
He was past it, yeah.
Yeah, he was past it.
And we felt it, right? And we felt it last season, especially in the crunch time. And we're seeing it now. And although the goals aren't coming from Jesus, right now, because we've been scoring elsewhere, we've had goals come in elsewhere, which it's been a while since we've been able to say goals are coming from somewhere else other than our center forward. I just feel like he's such an important player that the goals will come. I know they will.
Agree.
He's too talented to not score. He works too hard not to score.
Yeah.
I think just once he gets into a bit more of a rhythm, and gotta shed this, gotta get the monkey off his back here.
Yeah, he'll nick one in. Like I think his last goal was the one that bailed off Lloris. I want to say that was his last goal against Tottenham. I think that was his last goal. I might be wrong there, but I think that was the last goal. And then obviously he hit the bar as well, and it was a lovely little cut inside. And you probably just say maybe he's just trying to be a bit too cute with that, and he probably just passed into the net. But it's still it's unlucky. So, but like you said, 45 million, I think he was. I think that emphasises the slight differences between us and City as well. I mean, for example, City have Haaland, who scored 14 league goals. But we have 4 players, maybe even 5, that have scored over 5 goals. In Odegaard, Jesus. Odegaard's now a top goal scorer, and Saka and Martinelli, and I think xhaka's almost at 5.
Yeah, he's up there, yeah.
Yeah, so we're kind of dispersing our goals across the pitch, and that's the difference. I think we can come at it from so many angles, which is really, really good to see. And in the end, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth in the first half. They had a couple of chances. I did want to ask you one thing in the first half. There was a call for a penalty. Do you think we got a little bit lucky on that one? Do you remember that one on Saliba? Where
was it the one with the offside? It predecessed it, right?
Yeah, but they didn't really show. The offside looked very close. When I initially watched it, I remember texting someone going, "Saliba's off here." That's what I thought.
I think I was worried initially, but then when they started to show it, I mean. Maybe it's because the scars, they cut so deep, right, that we just think, oh, yeah, he's off there. We're down 10 men, and that's that. But I remember when they started showing the replays, I just remember so many instances where we've had goals or things called off because of they're bringing every angle, they're showing every line, they're doing the dimensions of the shadows, and it's like, oh, yeah, he's off. Or the Wolves player is offside, right? And
get on with it, Kay.
Yeah, just let's get on with it, and I'm very glad that it worked out that way, because sometimes it feels like the world's out to get us, but I guess not this time.
Yeah, exactly. We maybe got away with one a little bit there. They could have been a little bit aggrieved. So leave it up.
It was a little clumsy, wasn't it?
It was a little. I feel a bit for him because I just watched it again. I'm watching the highlights now, and there's not a load he can do because he kind of has to check his run a little bit, and the player cuts across him, and he kind of I can understand how it's difficult to get out of the way at that point because Saliba's just kind of he's got his full pelt and then he's basically had to pause because the ball's kind of checked on him. But I mean, overall, I think this wasn't one of Saliba's best games. He had the pass back that almost they scored from also as well. The great thing about our centre back partnership, Garrett, is when Saliba has a slightly off game, which is pretty rare this season. I think he's been fantastic, but Gabriel, has a fantastic game, and I thought Gabriel was probably our best player on the pitch alongside Ode-Guard, maybe. And I think they're a great partnership. I mean, for me, they're the best partnership I've seen since Campbell and Toure back in like the Invincible era, 2003, 2004 area. But
we haven't had it. Well, the Mertesacker Koscielny and their peak. I mean, that felt like a really complete pairing. But I don't feel like they were ever as physically dominant as Gabriel and oh my gosh, and Saliba were. Yeah, Gabriel and Saliba were. And it's crazy to think too, because Koscielny and Mertesacker at that time were really at like the end of their careers, all the experience you could ask for, established internationals, and Gabriel and Saliba, they're 21 and 24, 20, maybe younger.
21, 24, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see how dominant they are. I've heard the word like imperial used for Saliba's performances, and maybe not today, maybe not Wolves, but as a season overall, I mean, it describes him perfectly.
Yeah, he's been transformative, really, isn't he? And it's not just him; it's the moving of Ben White to right back, which I'm not sure.
England international Ben White.
England international.
Yeah.
You think he'll play? I get the feeling he won't. Well, he might do if Kyle Walker's not fit. I feel like he might be the one to fill in if Kyle Walker is not.
Well, who's playing
fit.
right back for England?
Oh, but
Kyle
then
Walker
again, it might be Trippier. It might be Trippier that they play because he's on set pieces. So maybe Ben White doesn't get a look in unless they consider him at centre back. But this manager seems to like playing Harry Maguire, so that's a bit strange. But it's very. I mean, I'm obviously we don't really care too much if our players play too much in the World Cup rather than play less than more. I think it's the Brazilians I always look at and think it would be nice if they played because it's almost like
so important.
It's huge to them, isn't it? I think that's
everything.
The one country it's that club football's nowhere near it. Like that's the one country where you see the videos, don't you, of them being announced in the club and they're like in tears on the. It means absolutely everything. So that would be really epic. I kind of rooting for Brazil in this World Cup personally because we got some Arsenal players in that squad and hopefully they feature a little bit, but not too crazy.
Other than that though, I'd like for the rest of them to enjoy a nice warm stay in Qatar and then exit the group stages and get back to London in one piece.
Yeah, that's what we want. I'm looking heavily at Saka, Partey, and Xhaka because I feel like they're going to play the most minutes.
Yeah.
But and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Deschamps, plays Koundé instead of Saliba or something like that. But we'll have to wait. It's insane that I didn't even realise, but the World Cup actually starts this Sunday, which is just mental. I can't believe it. But I just don't know. And there's going to be an injury a day, and I just keep my fingers crossed. It's not an Arsenal player. Yeah, but it's like you said you were confident going into the second half. I wouldn't say I was as confident as you. I was a little frustrated. It was kind of a back and forth game. I knew, it wasn't necessarily going to be easy. I don't think Wolves necessarily are bottom of the table side. They've definitely got some good players. Adama Traore always kind of worries me, and they've got some good technical players.
Guy's built like a linebacker, isn't he?
It's insane, really. If he had end product, he would be incredible, but he literally always fluffs his end product. But
I know.
In between that, he's scary as hell, isn't he? So
I know.
It's just incredible. But in the second half, I mean, it was a big moment Martinelli played a huge role in both goals because he grabs the ball and he shifts their defenders around because they're sitting so deep, Wolves. But I felt the second goal was really all about, everyone seemed to surround Fabio Vieira. It was a big moment for him. Mm-hmm. Have you been pretty impressed by when he's come into the first team? Because there's been a lot of criticism of him when he's not been in the first team and he's been in the League Cup team and the Europa League team that he's not had as big an effect as we hope. But when he's come in the first team, Garrett, like Brentford away when he played a big game and scored, and this game, for example, even United away, he came on and made a pretty good impact despite the fact we lost that game. Have you been quite encouraged by the first sort of 5 or 6 months of Fabio?
Yeah, he's a tidy little footballer. He's really technical. He hits the ball really well. I always like a left-footed midfielder. Just kind of feel like there's a smoothness to the way that they carry the ball and play. But the first goal, just before his contribution to that. I just remember cursing him because he kicked the ball out of play for no reason, and it's just a horribly misplaced pass. And then I think maybe 2-3 minutes later, Gabriel Jesus plays an amazing ball back, cuts it right through the defense. Fabio Vieira takes a beautiful first touch and then clips it wonderfully over the keeper. And I think xhaka wanted to try and claim that goal, but Ode-Guard wasn't going to let him have it, was he? And
no, I like that from Ode-Guard.
He's a captain, let him have it. And I love the assertion and his willingness to get in and make those runs, those late runs. And, he's really attacking the goal, and just, it's great to see that, because I think he's a player that is so technically gifted that sometimes when he gets into positions where you wanted to see him, I mean, he literally couldn't miss that, but he's had instances where you say, man, put your foot through it, right? Or really just, and it's just good to see that even though he's had some instances in the past where he might have done better, that he's still persisting with that, trying to provide that end product, right? It's not coming if it's not coming from Jesus, like, it's great that we're able to get it from our attacking midfield and elsewhere.
No, I agree. But that is the one. I mean, Odegaard's you could pick so many players out of this team because they are a really likable bunch and they're playing such fantastic football. But Ode-Guard, I mean, even ever since we were linked to him on loan like 2 years ago, I'd remembered him since he was a 16-year-old. You heard about this sort of crazy wonder kid, and I was like, sign him now. I remember seeing clips of him, in Norway, and this like technical wizard. I was like, that's an Arsenal player. That's definitely someone that would fit into our way of playing. But you're right, he lacks conviction sometimes in front of goal. And I remember from his early days with Arsenal, a couple of times he took a shot, and you were like, well, he's got a really good shot on him if he actually unleashes it. But sometimes he'll try to play that extra pass or take that against Chelsea, for example, away. He was through, just took that extra touch inside. If he hit it first time, I think he puts it past Mendy quite comfortably. But the second goal was really a good sign for that, I felt, Garet, because I don't think that's a very easy finish at all. And
makes it look easy, but it's not at all. Yeah,
exactly. Martinelli again is just endeavouring non-stop. Work rate is unbelievable. It's incredible to think that Martinelli barely made the Brazil squad. And when that happened, I was like, they've got to win the World Cup. Sure, they have to win the World Cup. If this guy's barely making the squad, they've just got to win the World Cup. So I'm expecting them to win it. But what do you think of Zinchenko? I think Zinchenko played a good role there as well. So there's been a lot of debate about our left-back position this season from fans. Maybe not from Arteta. He clearly thinks Zinchenko's our number one left-back. But what have your thoughts been? Because I'm assuming you're a pretty big fan of Tierney, and obviously we've used Tommy Yasu to quite good effect there. It's an interesting position for us, isn't it?
I understand why Arteta likes Zinchenko, especially because of the system that he wants and how that left back really tucks into the midfield and kind of provides that support for Thomas Partey and allows xhaka to advance, which is crazy. The whole idea of xhaka being in a box to box. I mean, that's what Wenger said when he signed him, right? He's a box to box.
And we all laughed at it.
Yeah, and you see how he's played for us for the past number of seasons, and I mean, it's really been a coming of age for him. The way that I think Zinchenko has allowed him the freedom to play as such, and even though he didn't play this last game, but overall, but you see the control that he brings, the technical skill and ability that Zinchenko brings. He's a great footballer, but it's a really tough one because I do like Kieran Tierney a lot. I think he's an excellent leader. He's got the pedigree of his entire career being a first choice left back. And I think he's a better footballer maybe than people give him credit for. He's not a 2-footed hybrid midfielder like Zinchenko is, who I think grew up playing as a number 10 and just shifted back as a left back. But there are games I think where Kieran Tierney is going to have his time. And I think there's games where teams like Wolves are going to sit deep against us and we're going to have to break them down. And, I guess our first goal came from a nice, tricky little move on the left, but there's not going to a game where teams are sitting deep like this and overlapping runs and trying to, cut a ball back or something like that Kieran Tierney does so well. It's not what's going to be the difference. And I think Zinchenko today was part of being the difference.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's a really interesting player, and he just seems to fit that. I mean, it was clearly something in the transfer window he was looking for, because obviously we looked at Lozano Martinez for a long time, and then we quickly moved to Zinchenko, but we were linked to Zinchenko the whole the whole summer really, and obviously he worked at Man City with Zinchenko. So when we were buying him, and people go, maybe we're buying him for midfield, I was like, I don't know. If he's worked with Zinchenko as a left back for 3 or 4 years, we're probably buying him as a left back, and then it turns out that's what he is. But it's such a different role, like you said. It's a sort of hybrid, left back, left central midfielder kind of role. It's very interesting the way he plays it. Obviously, he has his defensive issues, and that we'll come on to that. I mean, I thought it was an absolutely brilliant finish by Ode-Guard. I thought it made it look way easier than it is. And now he's our top goal scorer with 6 in the Premier League, which is a really good thing for him, I think, because I watch him a lot, and I feel like sometimes he's only got 2 assists, which I think is a bit of a travesty with the amount of chances he actually creates.
Yeah.
I think he created like 3 big chances against Southampton away just in that game. So I feel like it's good to see if he's not getting all the assists, he's chipping in a lot with the goal on the goal front. And I think he's a fantastic footballer.
Yeah, the goalkeeper didn't have a chance with that, did he? I mean,
no.
He took a touch, just settled it right in the back of the net. I mean, it was emphatic,
lovely.
Really.
Yeah, lovely from that. And then we can relax a little bit more, which is something we've been able to do multiple times this season. But before this season, I don't remember relaxing until the 93rd minute, to be honest, in any game. I just remember seeing Rob Holding everywhere, and I was like, oh, God, my heart's beating so fast. But and so it's been really nice, to be able to sort of watch a game for the last 10 minutes and relax into it. But something who didn't relax was Ramsdale, who was really focused on keeping that clean sheet. We've had a couple recently, but before that, we've been struggling for clean sheets, despite the fact we've got the best defensive record in the league. But got really annoyed with Zinchenko, didn't he? Which I quite like to see, actually.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think. Did you watch the All or Nothing series? We never really talked about that.
No, we didn't. Yeah, what do you think of it?
I thought it was great. I mean, I love seeing I felt like it was a little. Like they're obviously aware that the cameras are there, but I think the instances in the halftime, pre-match, and post-match were what interested me the most. Yeah. Just because you see really a lot more raw emotion. You can't really censor what you want or can't say because the cameras are there, because you have to win a match or you have to react or do something right then and there. And I remember an instance where I can't remember the match it was last season, but we might have been up 2 or 3-0, and we let a goal in really late. It was nothing but a consolation for the other team, and Aaron Ramsdale was so upset that he didn't get a clean sheet. And I remember being a little annoyed about it. Like, come on, mate! Like, we just
it was points. Brentford at home.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, I remember the exact game.
It's okay, mate. Like, we just 3 points on the bag, keep it moving. Top 4 is looking good. Like, But I understand now, looking at it, like that is his character, right? Like he pushes himself for excellence always, and he's a previously relegated goalkeeper, if I remember correctly, right?
Twice, I think.
Yeah, and he's had to battle his way up through the system, and now he's an England international call up for the World Cup, and you just see how much pride he takes in his game, and I think he told Zinchenko to stop taking the fucking piss or something like that. And,
he did, yeah.
And he really got into him. But you know what? I think that's good, because maybe, you look at this instance as just a brief little moment in time of what it takes to be the best. And it's not pick and choose when you can play. It's 90 minutes, no stop, and then and that's the expectation. And I think Arteta's done a really good job in instilling that in this team.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. I love the fact that he's setting that standard, because it's all about setting the standards. I think you've seen that in the first team, when these sort of fringe players, fringe players is a bit harsh, but when they've come into the first team, they've almost felt like, we saw it with Reece Nelson a couple of weeks ago, they've almost felt this responsibility. So hold on a minute, this is serious now. There's a standard set here. Yeah. I don't want to let anyone down. Yeah. I think we saw it from Reece. I think we saw it from Fabio Vieira. It's
the expression of the rising tide lifting all boats, right?
Yeah.
And you look at the standard, I guess, would be the tide that's rising that Arteta brings, and all the boats are the squad players, right? And when you bring, because you're right, you mentioned back earlier Fabio Vieira, he gets put under a little bit of criticism when he's not in the first team, but when he is in the first team, I think the expectation is that this is the first team. This is Arsenal. We're top of the Premier League. Like, no fucking around. We're getting straight at it.
Yeah.
And I think when you see like Reece Nelson's performance when he came in and had to do a job, that was his opportunity to be part of the rising tide, and he seized it right after it.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
if that continues for 24 more matches,
I know.
it's
a long way to go still.
It is.
Yeah. But it's look, at this point, it's beyond what we could have thought. But now we're there. Obviously, you want to take full advantage, and it was a great win. You could tell he was ecstatic with the win, and he said the players had watched the City game on the bus down, and
I love that.
Which I love that too. I was like, that's good. Let's not act like we didn't. We were watching it. Of course, we're watching it, and that shows a little bit about the belief in the squad. I think as well. You know, in the fact they're watching something like that so intently. Whereas,
what do you think, Jack? I want to ask you a question. So you have match weeks where City win and then overtake us, right?
Yeah,
and then we have to go out and perform and take our spot back. And then you have match weeks where City lose to Brentford, shocking, and the pressure is there for us to go out and extend our lead. But, I mean, when you look at the two scenarios, to me, it's one of these situations where it's like, wow, look at the mettle in this team. I mean, they are right there. Yeah. And they're ready to go and grab it no matter the circumstances, right? They're down and they have to win in order to go first. Or they look at the table and say, this is our opportunity to push on. And man, they just grab it by the neck, don't they? I mean, what do you think?
I agree. And I think, we've been playing after them almost every week because obviously we play in the Europa League and we're playing Sunday. They sometimes play Saturday or they play earlier on Sunday, whatever it is. So that's a lot of pressure. Now, is it the same pressure that we'll get if we're still there come April, May? No. But it's really encouraging to see. We're going away to Chelsea, and we know that we don't win, and we're not top anymore. And we go and dominate that game, which in my opinion was one of our best games of the season. But we just because we dominate literally the whole game. But so it is really encouraging to see. Obviously, we've never this group has never been in a title race before. So there's still a lot of questions to answer, but there are players in there.
Exactly. You've got Jesus and Zinchenko and Arteta for that matter. That although he wasn't the head boss in charge, or necessarily, I mean, Gabriel Jesus was a very important player for Manchester City in his time there. Zinchenko maybe not so much, but you look at their involvement in that squad. I mean, been there, done that, right? They've seen what it takes just by being part of the process. And I think, the squad is young. The squad hasn't done it for an entire season to be considered very serious contenders or a title-winning team. But there's so much talent in this squad that I don't think that should be discounted. And you know what I think is a benefiting factor to this team into this season is that no matter what we do, because of Manchester City, we are always going to be the underdog. Always. Right? No, we will always have a manager who hasn't accomplished anything. We will always have a squad that's too young. We'll always have a squad that hasn't done it for 38 matches. But at the same time, we have a squad that the expectation is not there because of who Manchester City are. And I think this team, I think this club relishes that position because the pressure is not there. The pressure is on Manchester City 100%, right?
Hugely, yeah.
Hugely. If they meant the pressure is on Chelsea, the pressure is on Tottenham, the pressure is on Manchester United and Liverpool. Arsenal didn't even finish in the top four last year or really, quite frankly, at all lately. We've been nothing but an afterthought, much to our frustration as fans and supporters. And now this whole club is hungry to impress. And, there's a saying in America that when there's an underdog in a sport and they're hungry dogs run faster because they want to get fed and they want to win and they want to achieve. And I think this team is a perfect example of that expression. I mean, these dogs are all hungry and they're running and they're working and they're ready. I think they're ready to achieve and really make some big big impressions on this league.
I agree, and what's incredible is that, like you said, the youngest squad in the league. So in theory, a lot of these players, their best years are ahead of them, which is remarkable when you're seeing what they're doing at this point. It does make you think. I mean, if we tackle, it was a great win. If we tackle a little bit about the sort of next 6 weeks and how we manage that, we've got 10 players going to the World Cup. If I'm looking at it from sort of a bird's eye view and looking at all the top 6 or 7, we certainly don't have as many players playing in theory as like a Man City. They've got 16 players going to the World Cup. But I wouldn't say we're benefiting as much as like a Liverpool. We only have 7 players going to the World Cup, and some of those aren't starting, other than Alisson and Van Dijk, maybe 1 or 2 others, but a lot of those aren't starting. So, and Liverpool will get their injuries back and fitness, but obviously we've created a gap there, which is probably hopefully going to be really, really vital for us.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can come through the World Cup relatively unscathed. We talked before the podcast about let's just hope our players play very little and get out of the groups. I said if it's Brazil, maybe I'll make an exception because it's Brazil and we know what it means. But yeah, I think that's our hope, and I'll be watching the World Cup mainly from a selfish point of view, watching Arsenal players and hoping that they come through every game unscathed. And we will see where we go with that. But we've got a few things to happen in the next few weeks. We've got a few friendlies lined up. Hopefully, by the time we come back on Boxing Day, I don't think a lot of people have talked about it, but our second goal scorer last season in Emil Smith-Rowe should be back fit. How big do you think if he does come back fit and he stops having these little groin and hip niggles, because he's obviously had surgery now, how big do you think he could be? Because we've not really been able to rotate Martinelli or Xhaka at all, have we, really?
Yeah, I mean, look at what he did last season for us. He was so important. So, I mean, I think he earned himself an international call-up as a result of his performances. And had he been fit, he would have been an integral part of this squad up to this season. And I don't think he could have been ignored for the World Cup just based off of the performances he'd been able to put in prior to. He's going to be huge. I mean, like a new signing, they would say, when he comes back. I don't even know if he's played a full. Has he put even 90 minutes?
He's played 48 minutes this season.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing that we've been able to get this far without a player who took on the responsibility as being the number 10 at Arsenal, who we gave that responsibility to because we believe so much in his ability. So promising. I mean, when he comes back, it's going to be huge for this team. And I still think, yeah, he'll be able to rotate kind of Martinelli and Xhaka and maybe even Ode-Guard, and I think I think he has what it takes to kind of play alongside in deeper parts of the midfielder. He's so technically gifted. Maybe not at another point in his career, but in the right situations, we might be able to really fit him into this team in a lot of different areas. But I still think this squad's light, even when he returns. We're just praising Reiss Nelson a moment ago, but I was really nervous when Xhaka went down and we had to call on a guy like Reiss Nelson to come in and play such an important part for us. And I think that's reflective of how light this squad is, and work that needs to be done during the 6 weeks of World Cup from Arteta and Edu's perspective.
I think would you agree with me that, because I've been very critical of Arteta on the pitch, certainly in his early years, but I was never really very critical of him off the pitch in terms of who he tried to sign and who he removed. In fact, almost all of those I backed. Like even when he was doing, there was a lot of controversy about the Ozil stuff, and I was like, no, he's doing it. I agree with that. It's like the Aubameyang, I was like, I agree. I see exactly why he's doing it. And predominantly his signings, obviously we spoke a little bit about, Nuno Tavares and the Congo, but generally speaking, when he spent big money, he spent it really well. Like everyone from Gabriel all the way to Zinchenko, he spent it really logically. So my feeling on January is I have absolutely no worries about who they want because the evidence is there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have worries about maybe who they'll be allowed to purchase. Who are they going to get? Who are they going to get backing for? If you had to predict, who would you say? What do you expect that they will get back? Because I'm sure if Arteta could have it, he'd spend 2 or 3. But what do you think we'll actually get back for?
I think we'll get back for 2 players.
2? You think 2? Do you?
Yeah, I do. I think so. Honestly, because and I'm looking at it from the perspective of like kind of what this squad needs, but also I say that with a little hesitancy just because I know like the past kind of sometimes tells the future. But if you look at the situation that we're in right now, I mean, just I'm gonna quickly look at the table. I mean,
it's always fun to look at it.
Yeah, let's have a look. I mean,
sometimes I just sit and stare at it.
We're 5 points clear of City, right? 8 points clear Spurs in fourth. 11 points clear United. 15 points clear of Liverpool. I mean, the list goes on, right? So, and you look at where we're at, and I mean, you'd be crazy not to capitalize on this momentum, right? Yeah. I mean, if the players there, if Arteta and Edu have someone that's circled on their list as the guy that's going to take this team to the next level in January. I mean, if I'm the Cronkies, if I'm Josh, and I'm as invested as I say I am, I mean, I'm, how much, right?
Yeah.
Because how important is it for this team to not only get back in the Champions League, but to reestablish themselves domestically as a true powerhouse? And I mean, I think he'd be jumping over dollars to save pennies if he didn't sign the right players.
Yeah.
That we needed to really push on for a title challenge. So, I mean, I think we go for a number 8 because I think Lokonga's kind of proved himself to be a guy that this season isn't going to be reliable. And I think we need cover for xhaka on the right.
Yeah.
Badly, really badly. Yeah. So if we can identify 2 targets in those positions, which I'm sure they've got already figured out.
Yeah.
Just based off of what you said, like the history, how strategic they are, and when they want to spend money, how effective it's been. I think they got to go for it.
Yeah, I agree. And then there's obviously, on top of that, you never know with World Cup. Like most World Cups always create a splurge of signings anyway.
Right.
Now we've got one in the winter break. So in theory, based on that, January is going to be a bit more manic just anyway, based off that.
Yeah. And the summer was kind of a weird, this kind of post-COVID transfer market has been different. It's been off. Pricing, clubs in Europe haven't had quite the amount of money to spend. The market's been a little stagnant. Like, I don't know. I'm really hoping that the World Cup puts a bit of a fire under people's seats to really get after it in January, especially at Arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you saying 2 is making me optimistic. In my head, I think in the summer we tried to get a centre midfielder in the last, at the 25th hour. Douglas Luiz, right?
Douglas Luiz, yeah.
Who signed a new contract now, but in theory, I think we put in a 25 million bid. So in theory, that's money's there. So it's whether the secondary money is. I had this theory that maybe if we got 2 in, we'd have to maybe remove one, and maybe we'd look at. I think Marquinhos will go out on loan, but maybe a Lokonga may get pushed out on loan to get another one in, and I would be for that. Like you said, I don't necessarily think he'll see more minutes in the second half of the season than he did in the first. So
yeah, I mean, if we just quickly we look at the bench that played at Wolves, right? I'm trying to see. So we look at the bench. It was Turner, Tierney, Holding, Cedric, Elneny, Vieira, Marquinhos, Nelson, and Nketiah.
Feels light, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even was Lokonga even?
No. What's quite interesting, I was going to mention,
he wasn't even on there.
He wasn't in the squad, and there was absolutely no mention from anybody about why he wasn't in the squad.
I didn't even pick up on that, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and some people said, well, maybe he was one of the ones with a stomach issue. But the stomach issue wasn't realised until they were on the bus. So there's no way they dropped him off or something.
Yeah, I don't know if they travel with 20 in the event that something happens like that. But interesting.
Yeah, good point.
But I understand what you're saying with him going out on loan. Maybe one has to go out for him to come in. But I think this squad, this first team is so light that we have to just add to it. I don't know if we can afford.
I mean, he only really has, if you count everybody, he only really has about 14 total players that he trusts to be part of this first 11. You could argue Tomiyasu in, he'd be one, Tierney in, he'd be another, and then the other player, you may say is like a Smith Rowe. I wouldn't even say Vieira's at that point yet. He came in and did well in the last game. So it's so light in that sense that, like you said, I think it would be really, concerning if we didn't go for one minimum.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be, like you said, the two, and the two we're talking about were two we talked about in the summer a lot. I think a lot of Arsenal fans mentioned the coverage for Saka and the possible. There was a lot to talk about Tielemans and Douglas Luiz, so that those positions were constantly talked about. So, like you said, I think it's because you just don't know how teams are going to be in 6 months' time. This is a huge opportunity, isn't it? Like Chelsea are in a mess at the moment. Yes. Liverpool, like you said, a lot of injuries and struggling, and so I think it's a huge opportunity, like you do. And hopefully we turn up with it. It'll be very, very interesting. Will you be watching the World Cup?
Oh, definitely, I will. I mean, I have a lot of nostalgia associated with the World Cup, and I always get excited for it whenever it comes around. I wish it was in the summer. I'm kind of frustrated with it being in the wintertime. I think I'm mostly frustrated with it being in the wintertime because of it putting a halt on Arsenal's momentum. But it should be exciting, and from my perspective, America looks like a promising young team, and I'm hoping that they can make some waves, at least get out of the group stage and at least get out of the group, the round of 16, just because I feel like we always come up against Ghana or someone like that in the round of 16 and they kick us out. But those teams have been so frustrating to watch, the old United States teams. Yeah. I only watch them because of my passport pretty much. But no, I'm actually kind of excited to see what this team can do. So we'll see.
You've got some good young players, yeah. I mean, seeing Tyler Adams at Leeds, he looks like a good player.
Yeah.
Leeds have got a few young American
players. They do, yeah. They have a couple, and I think Sargent plays for Leeds, does he? And Matt Turner, right? He should be starting in goal.
Turner. Is he going to be number one for?
I think he will be. I don't know for sure, but there's been a lot of talk about him being part of the rotation, right. So that should be fun.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, just as long as the Arsenal players come through it unscathed. Yeah, I want Partey, Xhaka, Saka, Saliba back as soon as possible. It seems like if we hedge our bets, the likes of Saliba and Jesus and Martinelli may be the ones to go the furthest if we're to hedge our bets into.
I mean, we're talking a lot about Arsenal buying players in the January window, but after a World Cup frenzy. But I mean, what do you think about Saliba probably starting every game for France and then coming back and having a price tag of the most expensive defender in the world over his head
without the contract signed at this point? It's worrying, but I always look at it from the perspective of I'm like, well, he could. I expect the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona to be in for Saliba at any point in time because I just think he's that good. But I also look at it and think, well, hopefully the bridges have been mended as well as they can be, and he probably should see that he's starting for us more than he would start for any of those clubs. And he's just 21. Mm-hmm. He's just 21. If he was 24, 25, I'd maybe be looking at it. But at 21, I'm really hopeful. And another thing Arteta has is a pretty good track record of getting people to sign contracts when he really wants them to.
Yeah. Saka just signed. What was it, last week?
It's not been confirmed yet, is it, Saka's?
Did he? Did Arsenal put a whole thing?
I think someone announced it, but it was the old announcement of his previous contract, and someone tried to throw it up.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, I saw it.
I could have swore that
But the actual initial, I don't think anyone, because obviously you've got his Martinelli's. The only one that officially signed was Gabriel. He signed his new contract. But
that's right.
Martinelli's his and Saliba. Like you said, just even without the January window, those three contracts they're vital, aren't they? The sleeper, and hopefully they don't limit us too much because I presume they're all in for a pretty hefty pay rise, aren't they? But we trimmed our wage bill to such a ridiculous degree. Hopefully we shouldn't really be too worried about it. You would think.
No.
Yeah. But no, I agree with you. I think Saliba, Saka, Martinelli, those are other things in January you hope to do. But again, you don't know. Yeah, like if they have a storming World Cup, it's like I'm in two minds. Do I want them to have, or do I not? But Martinelli's going to sign. He's basically said he's going to sign. I think Saka's going to sign. It's the Saliba one.
Where's the pen?
Where's the pen?
Yeah, give me the pen and I'll sign it.
That was great. But then the Saliba one, because of everything that's gone on, and he doesn't give a lot away, does he? In his his post-match stuff.
So stoic, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just he's incredible, really. But I hope he wants to be here as much as he looks like he does in every game. I mean,
he seems really bought in, doesn't he? I mean, you see the way he celebrates with the players and the fans, and he seems like a player that's invested. So
massively. Well, let's hope. Hopefully, maybe we can chat again when we're getting a little closer and we're still up there fighting for it, because it's incredible. But we're 5 points. We got to enjoy it. We've got Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we're top of the league. Nothing can affect that at least. And then hopefully, if we come back on boxing, when's the World Cup final? Is it December 21st, 22nd, or something like that?
No.
Because my worry is if this is like a Brazil-France final.
Yeah, let's see. I want to check right now. I have the World Cup website up here, and the matches. So the first match is on Sunday. I believe.
Qatar, Ecuador, or something like that. I'm trying to see as well.
This is a pretty brutal website.
This one says December 18th.
Okay.
I think.
And then
Arsenal play 8 days later.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Against West Ham, I think.
Yeah, it is West Ham on the 26th.
There's a chance that if it goes the way you think, and lots of World Cups do, but not all of them, the likes of Jesus, Martinelli, maybe Saliba, maybe even Saka, aren't featuring in that game coming back, and I'm suddenly getting nervous again. So
I know.
Because it's before the window, it's not like you can sign someone and bring them in. So you've got to hope that the likes of could be a really big winter for Smith Rowe and Vieira.
When is he slated to be back?
I think when he first had surgery, they said December. So in theory, hopefully if he's back in the first few weeks of December, there's a chance of him being match fit for that later December games.
Was it a growing pain related?
Yeah, it was a groin injury that he's had repeatedly. I think that they did surgery on or something.
Interesting.
So I don't know exactly what the surgery entailed, but even today you saw Nkunku from France. He went down and he's out of the World Cup. And he didn't look good, his knee injury. So you're just seeing stuff because these guys are just playing, travelling day after. I think we travelled on less than 24 hours after the game to meet up with the World Cup teams. It's just insane.
Bonkers,
so it's gonna cost teams. We're gonna need a little bit of luck. Definitely with the squad, we're gonna need a little bit of luck, aren't we? And you got to keep your fingers crossed that we're gonna get it. We're due a little bit, so keep our fingers crossed. But Garet, it's been great having you back on. We are on @PurelyArsenalFP on Twitter, and we're on YouTube. If you just type in Purely Arsenal, you can subscribe for free, no adverts. We don't do any of that on there. But we're also on Spotify and on.
I just found you on Spotify. Like I didn't know you guys were on Spotify, so I just followed you.
There too. I don't listen on Spotify, but people tell me we're on Spotify. So, and I think we're on one or two. We're on the good apps and some of the crappy ones as well. So we're on a few of those as well. So wherever you need to find us, we're hanging around, and we will try. I'm not going to do the. I hear people doing a podcast every other day over the World Cup. I'll definitely do one or two leading into the West Ham game and talking about the transfer window, because I get the feeling if we do something in the transfer window, it may get announced before the transfer window actually opens. I think we might be in that bracket, because what have we got to do over the next few weeks? We've got to be calling. I want us calling Shakhtar Donetsk and playing teams like this, and just saying, hey, let's do the deal right now. So it doesn't. He
looks like a nice player, doesn't he?
He does. Did you see his interview with Zinchenko's wife? Did you see that?
I did.
I'm sitting there wondering if that's, character-wise, is that. But he didn't talk out. He talks very openly about basically saying he's leaving in January.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
He was pushing very hard for a move in the summer, wasn't he?
Yes.
Practically begging to be sold, transferred.
Yeah. The only thing that hesitate on that one, Garet, is he's a left winger that is right-footed, and in theory, we wanted the opposite if you trust the Rafinha stuff.
Yeah.
So it's whether he just believes that it doesn't matter if he's left-footed or right-footed.
Did you notice the comment he said? He said, "Would you?" I can't remember the two teams. Was it? Would you rather go to Real Madrid and be a squad player or start at Arsenal? And he said, I'd rather start at Arsenal. And I looked at it and I was like, well, would he start at Arsenal?
He wouldn't start at Arsenal.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
But then someone said it on social media. They said, if he thinks he's going to come in and start Arsenal, then he can forget about it. And I went, but who's starting for us right now? We've won 12 games out of 14. We're top of the league. Unless you're signing Messi, I mean, we're in terms of the players in our bracket that we could sign, they're all going to have to find their feet and work their way into the team. Like Martinelli and Xhaka are two of the. I wouldn't change him for anyone at this point. So I just think, if he's got the right attitude, I mean, he'll get a lot of minutes to just in terms of rotation with them, in terms of the amount of games we play. And I mean, that player particularly, he wouldn't be bracketed out of Europe either, because he played in the Champions League, not the Europa League, so he could actually play in those Europa League games. There's some factors there, but sounds like the fee would be pretty hefty. We're going to have to call Josh pretty early and get the payment plan sorted.
Yeah. So, yeah, right. Yeah. What was it? A friendly, a term friendly loan or something? What do they always say it was?
Yeah. We've also been linked to an MLS player called Facundo Torres. I don't know anything about him. He plays for Orlando City.
Yeah, Orlando, right? I saw that. I don't know much about him.
I need someone that's watching a lot of the MLS. But that looks like a signing that, price-wise, would be a lot more realistic, I presume. But he would be coming in truly as a rotation option. I just get the feeling now, Garrett, that if we're signing someone that can compete for. We've got to be signing players that can compete for first in place now or in 6 months' time or whatever it is. Like, whether it's the party position starting next year or whatever, because we know he can't play twice a week.
It's got to be now.
It's got to be now, though. If you're signing in January, like you said, what's the point in signing in January? Is to make an effect in the next 5 months, right? That's why you sign in January. So in theory, we're trying to get people in January that are going to, help us challenge for a title, right?
Yeah. I mean, I look at the table. I know we were closing, but I just can't stop talking about how great we are. I keep looking at the table, and I look at the table and I look at the teams across England. And if I was a player that was positioning myself for a transfer and I wanted to go to the Premier League, I don't know any other club that I would rather be at than Arsenal.
Not at this point in time. No, I agree.
I mean, you look at this point in time, even just you take it back to maybe the halfway point of last season, and you project forward to now. I mean, Arsenal is a great place to be at.
Yeah.
For so many different reasons, not less to be mentioned where it's located, the facilities, the management team, the culture, the fans. I mean, it's amazing. I don't think it's a hard sell for Edu to go in and identify somebody that's going to make this team better and tell them, we want you at Arsenal. I think they would rip your arm off.
Yeah, I agree.
At this moment.
And it's amazing how quickly it can change. Look at, Chelsea were a Champions League winning club 18 months ago. Mm-hmm. And now they're basically just begging for anyone from Brighton to come in. And, I mean, they've got everyone from Brighton. Their recruitment coach, their manager, their goalkeeping coach, their players. They literally have gone and signed half of Brighton. And they're a mess on the pitch. They're a mess. There's no structure. And having that connection between Edu and Arteta and the board, that takes a long time to develop at clubs. Look at even Liverpool. They lost Michael Edwards, who was their recruitment guy, and now they're losing their ownership, and it's going to change. And that transition, whether it leads to something good for Liverpool at this moment in time, it's all up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, you look at United too, and the mess that they've created, trying to bring back a publicity stunt in Cristiano Ronaldo. Now look what he's doing to them. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, incredible. That stuff. And so
we wouldn't even talk about Spurs. Oh, we don't even need to mention that.
Exactly. But again, no, we don't need to mention them. And they're one team you look at in the table and you kind of can't believe that they're where they are, because they just play such terrible football. But Conte's the master of he's like the modern day Mourinho, isn't he, Conte? So, but again, he's not signed a contract, and there's that stuff up in the air for them, and all of that kind of stuff. I do think Spurs and Liverpool will be looking at this break quite happily with the players they have out, but again, there's opportunity ahead of us. I think there's opportunity ahead of us. We can get everyone fair if we have Smith Rowe back, if we can be active in the transfer window. We've got to be positive about it.
I meant to ask you, I never did, but I mean, thoughts on Newcastle?
Well, I think they've been quite shrewd with their. I mean, I find it quite surprising how people are kind of shocked that they're getting to. They've spent the most net in the last 12 months out of any club, including Chelsea. But they've spent about just over 200 million without any significant sale. But I do think it's been quite clever. The way they purchase players, like who they purchase, for example, it seems like they've got a bit of a strategy about it. And Eddie Howe seems like a pretty good coach, and they seem to be recruiting quite wisely with Isaac and Bruno Guimaraes and players like this. And Trippier looks like he's still got a little bit about him. And I watched them against Chelsea, and they're not super exciting, but they are very, very well structured. They don't concede a lot of chances. They've got not a similar thing to us at the back, but they've got big guys at the back that know how to defend. And I think they might be. I don't necessarily think they'll definitely get top four, but I think they'll be in and around the fourth position. To be honest, and hopefully, if we maintain where we are, that could really irritate the likes of Spurs, Liverpool, and Chelsea, which would be fantastic. So
that would be fantastic.
Because Newcastle haven't been around long enough for me to hate them yet, so
I know.
I'll be okay with it for a year or two, and then I'll despise them like the rest of them. So I don't know. What's your thoughts on them?
It's slightly annoying, I guess, just because they're a team that have come from nothing to something so quickly, and it's just a result of a cash influx, and it's just kind of one of these situations where I look at it and I say, like, are we dealing with another nation state type of club again? And you just look at the position we're in now, and we're dealing with the established version of that, of Man City, and I'm worried, not at all that this is what would happen in the Premier League, but like you look at La Liga, and you've got Barcelona and Real Madrid, who are essentially funded by a country and a province themselves, and the Bank of Spain. And then you've got the rest that have to deal with it. And I'm hoping that our league doesn't turn into that just because somebody saw an opportunistic investment in Newcastle. And it would just be a shame. But, it's right now it's exciting and it's fun because they're above Spurs and we have a game in hand on them, and we're 7 points clear they are, and they're in third place. And I just worry that, 5 years from now, that's just kind of like my thought on it. And it just feels kind of dirty to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I mean, it feels very, very early Chelsea 2000. Yeah,
right.
Kind of moment,
I know. I agree.
And I mean, the only thing I'm slightly thankful for is that, because there's nothing they can do about it now, is that I think in 2024, 5 teams from the Premier League will be able to make in the Champions League. I think. I think that's been agreed, because it is just getting ridiculous at this point. You've got like 7 or 8 teams that effectively, would probably compete for the title in all other European leagues, but then it is getting so competitive now that the Premier League, which is a great viewing, but again, if you've got people doing it by means of state-owned clubs and all this kind of stuff, it is a little bit frustrating when you're kind of still run in this self-sustaining way despite foreign ownership and things like that.
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit frustrating, that they can just just clubs on steroids, financial steroids, basically. But yes, it's definitely frustrating. But hopefully, that is something we have to worry about more in the distant future than the near one, and we can start to enjoy and dream a little bit over the next 6 weeks.
Embrace the now, right? Yeah.
Embrace the now. Yeah, we got to enjoy the present with everything we've been going through with the Arsenal. Not been terrible, but obviously wanting to get back to being the giants that we are, and we're feeling it a little bit. But Garet, it's been brilliant to have you on. I'm sorry I kept you so long, but it's been fantastic. Hopefully we can get you on again during the season to
let me know.
Talk about it. Maybe you are exactly what we need to just bring the title back where it belongs.
Hey, long may it last. Then I'll be here as long as I have to, and it may not be at 11 p.m. our time when Neil's up and running around, but I miss talking to him. So maybe one of these days we'll do like a Saturday night one.
Yes, yeah.
Sunday morning for him. But hey, I'll fill in anytime you need me.
You're a top man. Once me and you got our kids down to sleep, then we might be able to get on and do this a little more regularly on a regular basis, because it's a joy to talk about at the moment. It's amazing. I've always talked about lots of negative things. I've got nothing negative to say really. There's no negatives.
Nice?
The The negatives are like, oh God, I wonder what we ate that was wrong that gave us a stomach bug. It's fantastic. So when you've got stuff like that, you know things are going well, and it's not that often that happens at a club, at any club, to be honest. So yep, hopefully next 6 weeks, City are more worried about us than we are of them. That's what I'm hoping for. So.
Yeah, sorry about my camera. Anyone that watches on YouTube here, I've just been flickering left and right.
No, it's all right. But your sound's perfect, which is usually what they usually complain about. So
That's all the people want. That's all the people want.
They'll love hearing your strong voice behind it, so I like it. But Garet, it's been a pleasure, mate. Keep it Arsenal up the Arsenal. We'll stop the recording right here, and hopefully this will be uploaded tomorrow. Find us on all the usual outlets, guys, and we'll be back soon.